Did you know that the Bodach, an eerie figure from Irish folklore, is said to appear just before death or disaster strikes? For centuries, this spectral being has haunted the dreams of the living, a harbinger of doom that leaves terror in its wake. In the dark corners of rural Ireland, the mere mention of the Bodach is enough to send shivers down the spine. This figure, known as a harbinger of death and disaster, has become the subject of deep-rooted fear and superstition. Its sudden appearance has led to countless interpretations, with some seeing it as a vengeful spirit, while others believe it to be an omen of the inevitable. The Bodach is often described as a tall, shadowy figure with a gaunt face, its presence heralding the approach of death. The fear surrounding this being is palpable, with stories passed down through generations about its eerie visits to the homes of the dying or those soon to be struck by tragedy. The origins of the Bodach are as mysterious as the figure itself. Believed to be a malevolent spirit or even a personification of death, the Bodach has been a part of Irish folklore for centuries. In some regions, it is said to come for the souls of the wicked, while in others, it is seen as a warning, a chance to make peace before the end. Descriptions of the Bodach vary, but the common thread is its connection to death. Some accounts describe it as a ghostly figure that slips silently into homes at night, while others speak of a more corporeal being, cloaked in shadows, that appears just before disaster strikes. The Bodach's influence on Irish culture is undeniable, with its presence felt in countless stories, songs, and even superstitions that persist to this day. Families who believed they had seen the Bodach often took drastic measures to protect themselves, from performing ancient rituals to calling upon the local wise woman for protection. But despite their efforts, the Bodach's visit was usually a sign that fate had already been sealed. One of the most chilling tales involving the Bodach comes from a small village in County Kerry. The story goes that a family of 5 lived in a remote cottage at the edge of the village. They were a happy family, well loved by their neighbors. But one stormy night, everything changed. As the wind howled outside and rain lashed against the windows, the family gathered in the living room, trying to keep warm by the fire. The youngest child, a little girl named Mare, had been feeling ill for days. Her mother, worried but trying to stay positive, sang her a lullaby, hoping to soothe her to sleep. But as she sang, the fire began to flicker and a cold draft swept through the room. The mother's voice faltered as she noticed something out of the corner of her eye. A shadow, darker than the rest, moving slowly in the corner of the room. She turned, her heart pounding, and saw the figure of a tall, gaunt man standing just beyond the firelight. It was the Bodach. Its hollow eyes, void of any emotion, stared directly at the mother, as if peering into her soul. The rest of the family, unaware of the figure's presence, continued to huddle by the fire, but the mother knew. She knew that this was not a man, but a harbinger of death. With a sense of dread unlike anything she had ever felt, the mother clutched her child tightly, her eyes never leaving the Bodach. She tried to speak, to call out to her husband, but the words caught in her throat. The Bodach slowly raised its hand, pointing at the little girl, its finger like a cold, icy dagger aimed at her heart. The father, noticing his wife's sudden terror, looked around the room but saw nothing. "What is it, love?" he asked, but she couldn't respond. The Bodach remained in place, its presence growing stronger, as if feeding on the family's fear. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the Bodach began to fade, its shadowy form blending into the darkness of the room. The fire roared back to life, and the cold draft disappeared. But the mother knew. The Bodach's visit was a warning. The next morning, the family's worst fears were realized. Little Mare had passed away in the night, her face peaceful but pale. The village mourned her loss, but the mother knew that it was not just an illness that had taken her child. It was the Bodach. The dark figure's presence had sealed her daughter's fate, and nothing could have prevented it. The legend of the Bodach serves as a grim reminder of the fragile boundary between life and death. Its haunting presence in Irish folklore has left an indelible mark on the cultural landscape, a symbol of the inevitable and the unknown. The stories of the Bodach remind us of the deep-seated fears that lurk in the human psyche, fears of what lies beyond and of the forces that we cannot control. As we look back on these tales, we see not just stories of terror, but lessons about life, death, and the human condition. Bodach is more than just a ghost story. It is a reflection of the uncertainties that have always been a part of the human experience. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the haunting legend of the Bodach. Have you heard of this eerie figure before? What are your thoughts on its role in Irish folklore? Share your stories and thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and explore our other videos on folklore and myth. Stay curious and remember, the stories we tell often hold more truth than we realize.